Starting the recording now. All right, let's see. Let's hope that that works. Okay, here we go. And it's kind of funny to me. I'm doing the recording, but I don't see what the screen shows when things are recorded until after it's recorded. So I'm hoping everything works out just fine. We'll pretend that it will. Okay. And I've done pretty good at keeping up to date with all the stuff that's been turned in. And a couple of things that I wanted to go over uh, the contemporary processes again and talk about that some more. And I'm hoping that I'm there were a couple other people that said they were going to try to make it tonight, so I'm hoping they can make it too. And if they can, we'll have a good discussion about that. But before we get into all of that stuff, I want to share the most recent PowerPoint, artist PowerPoint. I'm This one I thought was really good as well, and they've all been good. You guys do a great job when it comes to the artist PowerPoints. I do want to remind people that we have uh, the um, applying the tools of artistic critique that's due at the end of this month, and then there are also some PowerPoints that still need to be done, and we will talk about that a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to share this one with everybody. I think they did a great job. Okay, so here we go. All right, so this is an artist PowerPoint by Rebecca in the class, and it's on Damien Hirst.
Everyone, this is my presentation on Damien Hirst. He was born in 1965 in Bristol.
I'm gonna pause it for just a second. Is that the volume seemed a little bit low? Can you still hear it okay?
I can hear it okay, yes.
Okay, all right. Then we'll keep going.
England and raised in Leeds by his mother. He developed an interest in art at a young age and decided to study fine arts at Goldsmiths College in London. He became very famous for his artworks because they're very bold and controversial, especially his sculptures, which kind of show a little bit more about his fascination of life, death, science, and religion and some medicine as well. He's one of the most influential contemporary artists currently. So one of the things that I really like about his work is the theme of death. This is one of his artworks, which is called A Thousand Years. It's an installation featuring a glass enclosure with a severed cow's head. Um, Inside, there's live flies that hatch and feed on the head and then are killed by that insect zapper at the top. So this artwork kind of shows the life cycle. So that also that death is something that's unavoidable and just part of life. All the flies in there are born and then they um, go over to the side where the cow's head is at so then they can feed and then they eventually die. And it's something that I find truly interesting because it's a little bit disturbing to see it. Luckily, it's in a glass case, so we don't smell it. But it is something that shows and provokes that emotional feeling of what life is. I think that theme that it has of the cycle is something really interesting. Um, because it shows that contrast of life and death at the same time. It's showing a natural process that usually happens just not in our vision or happens over a long period of time. But here you can see it all happening at the same time. So there are some controversy that I thought was interesting. especially when it comes to this artwork here, which is For the Love of God. It is a life size platinum cast of a human skull that was covered with 8,601 diamonds and then a large pink diamond on the forehead. This one is showing a lot of contrast between the price and wealth of diamonds, as well as what the price is of um, like a person who has passed away. I think this also shows a lot of his fascination with death, just because instead of hiding death, he covers it with thousands of diamonds that can show a contrast between luxury and mortality. So I really thought this sculpture was interesting from it as well. It's called Verity. It's a 66-foot bronze sculpture that is in England, and it depicts a pregnant woman holding a sword. I think it's very interesting because it combines the idea of life and vulnerability. He actually has a couple of artworks that show like pregnant women, and I think it's something beautiful because he likes to point out the new life that can be created, and it also shows us the vulnerability of the woman, but also the pose and kind of the way that the sculpture is made. It kind of shows empowerment as well. I think it's beautiful to see how like fragile human body really is, but also how strong it could be. So I also like these two works that he has. Pharmacy is super interesting. It's actually like a whole pharmacy that he set up inside a museum. It shows a lot of our dependence on medicine and how we want to avoid death the most that we can. I think it's very interesting that he has this whole thing set up um, to see and show just how big kind of like a pharmacy could be, and what it represents is that fear of our lives ending, that everything we try to do to prevent that thing that's inevitable. I also like his sculpture here, Hermaphrodite. It kind of shows a little bit more, kind of like in Verity, the um, vulnerability of the human body. And it's very interesting, this one with the arms cut off and one of the legs as well. Kind of shows somehow it's stable, it's in a very upright position, keeping us interested and looking around, as well as the coral on the structure itself, giving it that more lifelike texture as well. I think these are some of Damien Hirst's more uh, famous artworks, which are the animals in formaldehyde. I really, really like these ones as well, just because his preserved animal sculptures are among just like his most famous work, just because it's so interesting to look at. Um, it's interesting that the shark is in a dangerous like position, but also it is dead. So it's something that, again, going over his obsession with life and death. It's interesting as well, the cow with the hen on it, and then the half a calf, I believe, and then the zebra, just all showing them in basically caught in life, but also that they are dead. So it's interesting to be able to see both of those things simultaneously. I truly think that Damien Hirst is an amazing artist, and these are just some of the sources that I use for this presentation.
Oh, rather macabre, but I like it.
Yeah, I thought that this was really well done, and it was kind of a couple of things that I really like is all of the citations are alphabetical. They're all done correctly, and they all have the accessed on date. So that was like one of the first things I noticed that I thought was really happy about. And when Rebecca did biographical stuff, the material that was chosen for the biography stuff was again directly related to the kind of artwork or the kind of themes that Rebecca saw in Damien Hirst's work, which I thought was kind of interesting. You know, none of you are giving a completely rounded biography, which is one of the things we talked about at the very beginning. We did not want that. When you guys do give biographical information, it's always been specifically targeted to or in relation to the themes that you see in their artwork, which I think is really a great way to do it. Because, yeah, we learn a little bit about where they come from, but it's it doesn't the presentation does not get bogged down in it. And I thought this was great showing different parts of the life cycle, you know, with that life and death kind of theme, because we're not just talking about things decaying and dying, we're talking about lots of different kinds of aspects of that whole situation. And I thought that was really good too.
I actually, what was it? I really like you brought up the like how we're not doing a full on biography. Um, and I think what's really cool about these presentations have been it kind of allows the art to speak for the artist. Like we learn about the artist and their views through their work.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's really important. I do think I would have liked to hear a little bit about why some of the why some of those pieces were controversial. I mean, I my assumption is just because it's kind of graphic. Um, but I also like because of the way this is set up, I'm fine not knowing, and this also allows me the opportunity to go look it up for myself.
Yeah. And I can see I Damien Hirst oh what happened? Okay. Damien Hirst has been kind of he likes uh controversy. That's part of his
Mm.
marketing brand. And it's funny to me because yeah, it would be nice if your artist does have some controversy, it's nice to touch on what that controversy is. But I think looking at this and knowing the kinds of people that we know about already, I can kind of see where where some of the controversy is.
Mm-hmm.
Like on this, I'd be willing to bet that there are going to be people that are upset that he's killing flies,
Yeah.
you know, and I totally see that. And you know, everybody has a right to their perspective and their opinion, but I also believe, like what Clint Eastwood's character Dirty Harry said in Sudden Impact. I'm going to paraphrase it so nobody gets offended, but opinions are like armpits. You know, everybody's got them,
Mm.
and but the fact that some people get upset and some people really like it, and a lot of people wonder what's going on, I think that's awesome because it opens up a door for con not only self-reflection but also conversation.
Mm-hmm. I'm just glad the controversy wasn't he it that the art piece was racist or something.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is also one of those things that it seems like today people are less concerned about with social media being so prevalent and us finding it so difficult to find a difference, to recognize the difference between unbiased news and social media resources or entertainment. It's what is appears to me to be happening is sometimes controversy happens because one obnoxious person has a huge following, and they say something stupid without any personal reflection first, and suddenly that becomes a talking point. And there have been things about that, like when you say, "Well, at least he's not being racist." I have seen works where people are talking about their own life experiences, and people will latch onto it and choose to be offended because the person doesn't have a fill in the blank enough sounding name.
Hmm.
And like Nick Cave is somebody that I really admire and love, and I think his work is amazing. And it's funny to me because people have actually said, well, he doesn't know anything about the Black experience because they're thinking Nick Cave, that name is very similar to one of the white punk rockers singers in the 80s. And that's who they're thinking of, or something else. And I think stuff like that is hilarious because people don't bother doing their research before they decide
Mm-hmm.
to get bent out of shape and offended. But then you also have the other side too, where people are going to look at this and be offended because, he's denigrating a human skull. And that's something else that Damien Hirst is really good about doing. He's tries very hard to make sure that nothing is actually killed for his work, with the exception of those flies. And so this is a resin cast of a human skull,
Mm-hmm.
and the diamonds on it, people get offended about that, but the people that choose to get offended are not familiar with things like the ossuary chapels in Eastern Europe or Day of the Dead celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I think that Rebecca did a good job kind of showcasing a little bit, is that there is stuff like that. Like this, we have it looks like the individual's in the middle of an autopsy. However,
Mm.
the stance is this beautiful stance that comes right out of a Joan of Arc portrait painting. And there's so many things about this that are just amazing. It's it's a study on different different views of justice, and it's amazing to me. And there's so many different things to this, but yeah, you can go out, you can decide if you want to get offended by it. And I think that's Stephen Fry. I don't know if you know who he is. He played Sherlock Holmes' brother Mycroft in the second Robert Downey Jr.
Mm.
Sherlock Holmes movie. But Stephen Fry is a very well-spoken and loud advocate for atheism, and he is also somebody that loves to be in conversations alongside his very conservative counterparts, where they talk about things like choosing the path to not get offended, you know, and the willingness to support and defend the right to free speech. Because one of the things he says is it doesn't matter if you get offended by somebody, as long as you're able to set that aside for the amount of time it takes to actually think about what they're saying. And then you can get offended. But
Mm.
I love,
Yeah.
and he said one of the biggest
I
problems he
would.
sees about contemporary society is the propensity with social media content that so many people have to scream at the top of their lungs about how offended they are before they even understand what's going on.
Mm.
I mentioned that about Nick Cave. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Ringer with
I
Johnny
don't believe
Knoxville.
so.
Johnny Knoxville was the guy on the MTV Jackass show,
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
but
I'm
the
aware.
the, the
That's
whole
that show.
movie, and I want to say this, and I want everybody to suspend their willingness to be offended for just a couple minutes. But The Ringer is the whole plot is this guy owes a lot of money. He has to get it pretty quickly, and he talks to his uncle, who's a degenerate gambler, and you find out that there's a lot of money to be made gambling on the Special Olympics. So his uncle convinces Johnny Knoxville to join the Special Olympics uh, as a special needs athlete, specifically so that he can beat some of the other athletes, so that his uncle can make money betting on him. And it's just, I mean, it sounds so horribly offensive. What is so funny is that the International Olympic Special Olympics Committee are the ones that spearheaded the project and tried to find somebody to produce it for like 10 or 12 years. And 90% of the actors in it are Special Olympians themselves.
Hmm.
And it's just I don't know, it is a hilarious movie. Anyway, so yeah, the long and the short of all this conversation is, I think Rebecca did a great job.
Yeah.
I do want to uh, talk about this a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Mhm.
Okay. Here we go. All right. So this is the artist research PowerPoint. Um, this was due at the end of June, and we're a couple weeks past that. Out of we only have about half the people in the class who have done this. And I hope that everybody's seen how to do this because all 7 of the ones that have been sent have been really well done.
Mhm.
So I challenge everybody else, get this done before the end of the month. We only have a few more weeks before the end of the semester, so get this done, please, because you guys will do a great job on it, and it is um, a really good resource as well for other people on YouTube that are looking up their artists. Okay, so I'm gonna share this too. This is something else that I really need to remind everybody about. This is due this Sunday, and nobody's turned it in yet. And these are the artistic critiques of the work that you see, either that you've done yourself or somebody else has done for this class this semester. And I wanted to just go over this again um, for a few minutes, just reiterating the uh, process of artistic critique that we're learning using Feldman's model for critique. Now, how many of you have seen this video describing what you see?
I did watch it, yes. It was a while
Okay,
ago, though.
all right, great. I'm going to include it again for the attendance thing on this, for this class this week, because I want to make sure that everybody's watched it. But yeah, I love it because they go through this whole process of artistic critique in kind of a live setting. And I love how they do it. They do a terrific job. Now we can't watch the video because YouTube has, looks out for that. But they begin by describing what they're looking at. Then they talk a little bit about how the person, in this case Henry Moore, made this. What kind of tools were used, what kind of materials were used in laying the string and the plaster and stuff like that. And then they talked about what this possibly could mean. What are the decision processes behind? What are the thinking processes behind making some of these decisions about the areas of the feet and the hands and the kind of abstraction going on? And they talk about uh, what could this possibly mean? Thinking about, and one of the things they talk about is somehow an alien insect life form basking in the sun on a beach somewhere. And I just think it's fascinating the kinds of things that they come up with. And then at the end, they talk about how their perspectives changed just during the process of talking about it. So I love that kind of process of critique because yeah, we are talking about artistic critique, but this process of critique applies to almost anything you can encounter. And the tools describe, and then you're just using your vocabulary to explain what it is you're encountering. What's the color, what's the size, what's the material. The analysis is what's the process that the artist may have used? What kinds of decisions do you think the artist had made to put this together? How are the elements organized? I think that's a great question. And just, a thought experiment about if the materials were different, how would that change the artwork? And, how much of what you see is bolstered by the particular materials choice. And then interpretation, of course, this is where we start looking at the potential symbolism and meaning of the piece. There's I have you ever heard of an author named Gene Wolfe? Oh, hey Alex, good to
Um,
see you.
Hi, and no, I haven't heard of Gene Wolfe.
it sounds familiar, though
Okay,
it could be I'm thinking of something completely unrelated that would get us onto a tangent.
yeah, you're probably thinking of something totally unrelated because that's where your brain always goes.
Hmm. Yeah.
No, but Gene Wolfe is an author. He wrote a series of books called Earth of the New Sun, where it's a retelling of the Jesus story from the New Testament, but on an Earth that's like 2 million years in the future. He does this kind of science fantasy type stuff that the worlds are very immersive, and he's dealing with stories that cultures take for granted. But by putting them in a very different setting, he's able to look at different aspects of it. One of the things that I like about his writing is that he's a philosopher. So every chance he gets, he talks about the thinking behind what's going on in the stories. And one of the things he talks about is the layers of symbols that are in and through everything. And he said that one of the layers of the symbolism is the fact that whatever it is you're looking at exists. You know, it's whatever it is that you encounter exists, whether or not the artist intended it, as a product of their living within a particular culture. And so we can, whether or not the artist intends to give us a specific message, just by the fact of the materials that they chose, how they used the tools they had access to, can tell us a lot about them. And I think a good example of this is if we look at Byzantine tempera painting. It, let's see if we're gonna take a moment and I will look up um, what an example of this. Okay, and these kind of paintings, if we look at them, you know, they look very odd. They look very distorted. You know, the human is there just because we're familiar with what a human is made up to be. And then if we take Gene Wolfe's perspective and we start thinking about the time and place this was made, the tools that were used, and how all of these tell us quite a bit about the artist and their culture, then when we look at if this is painted in tempera, that paint dries very, very quickly. So they don't have a lot of time to do shading. So it's important then that the artist communicates the idea that there are folds of material, not that they're communicating the realism of the material. And if we extend that a little bit further, we look at these faces, the artist, it's not as vital to them to make a face that looks like a realistic human being than it is to communicate the fact that this is a face and it's a face of a specific person. And and then that lets us know what that culture valued. This culture is not valuing naturalistic human forms over the level of communication that is shown by the subjects within the painting. And so this becomes a baby because the scale is different and smaller than this, who is a human woman, because of our assumptions about who holds babies like this. And the colors that they wear communicate about what they see. And if we compare this to, let's say, I'm going to change this and say a Renaissance painting. We can see that there is a dramatic shift. We have almost the exact same players and layout, but the shift is that it becomes more important for the artist to demonstrate or to communicate to us that this is a relatively realistic cloth. Because they do have access to oil paints now, and they can smush the paint around and blend it. And it's a little bit more important that the bodies represent something that is more anatomically realistic. This isn't because this artist is smarter or better or taller or better looking than the other one. It has an awful lot more to say about the culture that the artist lives within and the symbolism that comes through just because the artist is a part of that culture. Does that make sense?
It does. Or at least to me.
Alex,
Yes.
what do you think? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Hmm.
And so when we look at these kinds of things in this kind of setting where we're critiquing something, the interpretation, I don't want anybody to hold themselves or to get upset at themselves because they don't see any blatant symbols. You're probably not going to see blatant symbols in most stuff, but by paying really close attention to how the artist makes their work and what the artist is paying attention to, the techniques that are important to the artist or the things that are important for the artist to include that you see as the viewer, that can give us information about their own worldview, intentionally or otherwise, and the culture within which they live. I think another good example of this is if we look at some of the Egyptian tomb paintings, you'll see in one spot the religious stuff, and that's where you get all the stereotypical triangle upper body Egyptian people with the ways they hold their arms, and you can see every single one of their fingers and toes. But then, like 5 feet away from that, the tomb painter was told by somebody just do something realistic that looks like kids at the banks of the Nile, and you'll see something that's almost photorealistic in its rendition of actual children playing with actual ducks with actual weeds by the actual water. And we can see that when in one setting it was very important that it look a certain way, and in another setting 6 feet away, probably painted within the next week or so, there's a very different set of standards applied to it because that was the cultural expectation. Anyway, I think I've beaten that enough. And then the last stage is the evaluation. And this comes down to whether or not you think it's successful. And I think that this is a really good opportunity as well to talk about how has your how have your thoughts about it changed during the moments that you've looked at it really closely. And I think that that is really important part of the evaluation because if art, if something that we label as art doesn't change you at all, then either you haven't allowed it to do its job or it's not doing its job very well. And because at the base of it, just like any other kind of communication, I think art on some level should impact us, at least as much as eating a marshmallow will.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't feel anything, um, that's pretty sad, I
Yeah.
think. There's a guy, have you ever heard of Clement Greenberg?
No.
No.
Clement Greenberg was an art critic in the 1950s, I want to say something like that. And um, one of the things he said is he was a really strong advocate for things like abstract expressionism and the new art that was specifically marketed to make ordinary viewers feel like idiots. Where if you don't get it, you're not smart enough. You know
Oh,
what I'm talking about?
yeah.
A little bit.
And
Definitely
Clement
get the
Greenberg,
picture.
what's that?
I said I definitely get the picture.
Yeah, and it's he did a lot towards making all of us feel really inadequate and unworthy when we look at quote unquote high art. But Clement Greenberg, one of the things he said is if you don't get it immediately, it's not worth getting. And I think that that is really, really sad because I think all of us have experiences where, like, there's a movie or a book
Mm-hmm.
or a family member or something that the initial reaction is either meh or I don't really get it. But then when you go back to it another year later, or when you read it again, or when you spend another 5 minutes looking at it, it starts growing on you and you start seeing things that honestly weren't there the first time you checked it out. And I think that that's, I don't know, I think that that's a big part of the evaluation process. getting that kind of interaction with something. And there's a couple books like Christopher Lee, who played Saruman. He read The Lord of the Rings every year, and he was kind of he liked to point out to people that he would read it in Elvish.
That
The guy,
sounds very accurate to what I know
yeah,
about him.
when he did when he was Scaramanga on Man with the Golden Gun, the Bond girl that they had playing opposite Roger Moore was from Scandinavia, and nobody in Thailand could speak the languages that she was comfortable with. So, in 2 weeks, Christopher Lee taught himself how to speak. I think it was Finnish, just so that she wouldn't feel alone. Just people like that. On one hand, it's kind of exciting that they exist, but on the other hand, everybody and their dog feels unworthy around them. But and there are books that I like going back and seeing. There are like comfort food movies. One of my comfort food movies is I really love Christmas Story, because the Christmas Story is a cinematic presentation of absolutely everything I hate about the over-marketization of Christmas and all holidays, all rolled up together. But it's done with such tongue-in-cheek, self-referencing humor that I can't help but really like it. I think I don't know. That's one of the what kinds of stuff do you guys keep going back to?
Hmm.
Um, so I like let me turn my camera on so you can see this. Um, Hi. So for me, I like to go back to Gossip Girl. That's just like my favorite TV show from when I was younger. It was that, and then I like rewatching like Spider-Man movies.
Oh.
Nothing crazy. That's all I do. Just rewatch those when I feel, or The Little Rascals is another one I really liked when I was younger, and I still go back to it when I'm older.
Are there things that you pick out and you find that are either funnier or deeper that you didn't pick up on earlier watchings?
Can I be honest with you? Every time I like rewatch them when I'm like, now that I'm a bit older, I'm just like, did I actually ever understand what I was watching? Or did I just like it because I thought it was pretty? Like, I feel like I'm picking up the messages a lot more. And yes, lots of funny scenes, but I'm just like, I don't think I ever actually understood anything. I think I was just, wow, this is pretty. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It, and there are some studios that thank you, Alex. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. There's some like I really like Studio Ghibli
Mm.
out of Japan. And one of the reasons why I like them is that, you know, they don't produce stuff just as a commodity. They're producing stories that are designed to have layers that you can go back and rewatch them and re-enjoy them. And some of the anime that I like are like Steam Boy, because you go back to that and you can watch it, and and whatever's going on in the world today, you can find parallels in that movie that was done, 30 years ago or however long ago it was. And I think stuff like that is really great. Um, and then of course, there are books, there are paintings. Like when I first came to Jackson Pollock paintings and encountered them, and uh, Rauschenberg, those two painters, Lee Krasner, yeah, a lot of these abstract expressionists, I didn't get it. I felt intimidated. I thought it was just a worthless waste of my time. And then I start finding out things like when I had a grant from BYU to study uh, um, indigenous art in like 5 different communities in North America. And one of the things I studied was the some of the sand painting that Pueblo and Navajo communities did. I have 3 brothers who are Navajo. The shooting chant sequence specifically, and then I find out that some of the people that I studied were people that Jackson Pollock studied too. And then I started looking at his colors in a whole new way because many of his paintings, 3/4 of them at least, have colors specifically from the Navajo shooting chant. And then I started seeing other things that he was doing, and it just made it so that now I get lost in him in his paintings. Same with Lee Krasner, same kind of thing. Rauschenberg or Rothko, when I look at some of their stuff, it's really easy to just dismiss it. And I gave one of my students a challenge to find a color field painting and blow it up full size and just sit in front of it for 35 minutes and see what she thought. And she said that she stayed there for like an hour and a half. And after 30 minutes, she just started sobbing. And it was just, she said it was one of the most cathartic experiences she'd ever had. And I think that is really, those are all great examples of the kind of power art can have to communicate if we give it the time and opportunity to do that. And I think when we find those things that we can keep going back to, um, that's a good example of how successful it is.
Mhm. I know for me, like, definitely say like my favorite game. Um, it kind of came at for me. It was like my favorite video game came to me at the right time. And I think if I had experienced it now, I probably wouldn't. It probably wouldn't have hit the same as when it did then. So I really like that aspect of art of how it changes and your opinion on it changes regardless of the medium, whether it's a visual medium or something like that. Um, but your opinion changes depending on your life experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful observation because, looking at this as a kid, there are some kids that are just, they think that Henry Moore stuff is just amazing. They can't get enough of it. It's magical. And then as kids get a little bit older, sometimes they think they don't understand what's going on, and that embarrasses them a little bit. So they feel kind of threatened by it, maybe.
Yeah.
And adults who have been trained by the echoes of, Clement Greenberg feel that since they don't get it right away, it's not worth getting, or they're not smart enough, and they're hurt. They don't have access to it. And and what you guys are talking about is just allowing yourself that freedom and that process to kind of engage with it, look at it, trying to understand it in the same kind of way as all of us have the family member that a lot of people don't like, but we find out we like them and we don't know why. And that's, the family and friends are like that. We've just, on some level, we can see aspects to them that we like about them. And regardless of whether or not they live their lives as a train wreck, and we're trying to scream at them to stop running towards the cliff edge as fast as they. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we can still see that, and I think that is one of the reasons why I love this whole process of artistic critique, as we've talked about it. The Feldman's model, because it does apply to absolutely everything. And when I've had people in my classes that were everything from computer designers and engineers and coding experts all the way to EMTs and nursing personnel, pre-med, um, psychologists, uh, plumbers, everything in between. And one of the things I get back over and over again is that when they started looking at things through this critique model that you and I are talking about, it opened up a whole new level of understanding and appreciation for what was going on. For the coders, understanding the client's needs better and how they can do a better job professionally. For the nurses, understanding what the patient's actual pain points are and what they actually need help with. completely transform things. For the psychologist, the same way, getting an understanding of how the patient was, what the patient was actually asking for, help wise, beyond what the words were that they were using. And last year, I had somebody in one of my classes who was a retired criminal psychologist, and um, what he talked about, he was using Feldman's model of critique, just like we do in the class, without even realizing it, to help find the best ways to help his patients. And I thought that was kind of fantastic. Anyway, so blah blah blah, rattle rattle. But what that comes down to is we have these two things: the artistic critique of my own work, artistic critique someone else's work. And what we're doing is 3 to 5 minutes going through those 4 questions, and you don't even have to record your own voice. And I do not want to see you in the video itself. What you're actually going to be doing is just the whole video is going to be recording of your critique while we see the artwork, and that's it.
Okay.
So, and it has to be one of your own pieces that you made from the beginning of the semester for this class, and something that you find, a separate one for something that you find on the discussions for artwork that somebody else has done for this class this semester. I have to be really clear about that because I have had, over the years, I've had somebody who went on a trip to Denmark. I think I told you guys this last week or something. Went on a trip to Denmark and was trying to pass off some of the art that they saw there. Somebody else was trying to critique his own stuff that he had made a year and a half earlier. And it was just, please, it's embarrassing. Anyway, so that's I really want people to be thinking about that and get that done before the end of the month. We only have a couple weeks before the end of the semester, so get that done in the next 2 weeks. There should be enough stuff done that you guys can reference and go to.
Okay.
And if you want to write this out and have AI verbalize it for you, be the reader for you, that is perfectly fine. I think I told you guys one of the best ones was somebody wrote it all out and then they had like Elmer Fudd do the voice. And I have no idea how they did it, but it was awesome.
Okay. I can do that.
And then somebody else, there was a young lady who was about 19 and her voice was like a little pixie fairy. It sounded like she weighed like 17 pounds. She sounded tiny. And she took an active role in the class and everything, but she couldn't stand doing this with her own voice. So she actually had her father read it, and her father was in a biker gang and sounded like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And it was like, this guy saying, "Hi, this is Nicole." And then he read everything that his daughter had written. And it was great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to talk a bit about this stuff again. We did talk about it last week, and there's two different things. We talked about conceptual and art, and dissected this a little bit. We talked about Plato's allegory of the cave, and I want everybody to watch these videos. Marcel Duchamp talks about ready-mades quite a bit. And what this whole thing is an aspect of art where we are sculpting within a person's brain. And what really makes me happy is that everybody who's done the attendance for last week and submitted that gets this kind of process. We're sculptors, we're talking about 3D modeling. And in this case, with conceptual art and contemporary art, for this module, we are talking about sculpting the thoughts and imagination in somebody's head. And Alex, are you familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave?
I've heard of it, but I don't exactly know what it is.
Okay. I'm gonna do a really short recap. Caleb, please keep me on track. If I go over 5 or 6 minutes, let me know. But
You know what? You can do it in two. You got it.
okay. But one of the things that Plato talks about is imagine that there are prisoners in a cave somewhere,
Okay.
and these people are chained up so that that's not what I wanted to show. This is sorry about that. The prisoners are chained up so that their entire lives, their focus is on the wall in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this, so it's in a cave, poor lighting and everything like that. The only interaction that they have, the only input that they get is behind them, at some level behind them, is a fire. And there are people that walk between their backs and that fire, holding up things that the fire casts shadows on the wall. And they hear these different sounds they attribute to these shadows. And so you can see here's the kind of setup. Here's the prisoners staring at the wall. They can't see but what's behind them or anything, and all they can see is people passing between their backs and the fire, so they can only see the shadows of the objects. And then the sounds that they hear um, are attributed to the things behind them making sounds. So they associate them. And then in the allegory, Plato says, what happens then? All they can do is just experience the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, there we go. So this shadow of a dog, and they think it's a dog. And then what happens if one of the prisoners is released and forced outside? All of a sudden they see the sunlight, and they're blinded for a while until their eyes adjust. They see the objects that were the things that they thought they saw the shadows of. And now they see the actual things that cast the shadows. And then what happens is, what if they go back after seeing all this and experiencing it? What happens if this guy who was a prisoner, now he feels he understands the world, goes back to the cave?
It's gonna feel smaller.
And what's that?
I said it's gonna feel smaller.
Yeah, it's going to feel smaller. And the people that he talks to, they're going to get angry at him because obviously he's gone crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Hmm.
And that's what's he compared it to the enlightenment of the real thinker, coming back to try to share his transcendent enlightenment with other people. But also he uses it as an opportunity to talk about what are the aspects behind the attributes that we give to things. Like by that I mean, let's see, it's called the theory of forms. And one of the things he talked about is, what if there is somewhere, this plane of existence, where the perfect vase resides, and all of us have a subconscious attachment to it, so that when we see something like this, even though it's a two-dimensional drawing of a vase, we still know it's a vase because subconsciously we compare it to that world of ideal forms. And I think if we combine those things, like cats, all of us know what a cat is, but there's an infinite variety of cats. We still, however, understand what a cat is when we see one,
Hmm.
or words like beauty. And then with those two ideas together, the allegory of the cave, where the person sees the actual things that cast the shadows and tries to tell that to people who have only known the shadows their entire lives, and then coupling that with the idea that there is a realm where the actual beauty resides, or actual roundness resides, then combining that together, we start getting into a realm where we're talking about what is the nature of reality. What, as artists, what are we getting people to do? On one hand, we can say we're getting people to get excited about our stuff so they can buy our stuff, so we have money to buy, Fruity Pebbles and eat every day.
Ooh.
Hmm.
But on the other level, you guys are artists because you have something inside of you that has to rupture and come out. And that process, you're sharing this kind of window into a version of reality that only you have access to. And this relates to questions of the fundamental nature of reality. What is there? Are there ultimate words or ultimate meanings behind chairs or beauty or words or objects or things? And this is something that people did not really directly address until after World War II, after the Korean War. That was a period in the United States and other areas of the world too, where we've come the closest to an average individual having an average job being able to support an average life completely. And so it gives people a little bit extra. Most people no longer have to scramble tooth and nail just to survive. And in environments like that, people start applying philosophy and deeper thinking to realms of entertainment.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the reasons why the world was ripe for things like conceptual art, like what Joseph Kossuth does. Is this making any sense?
Yes, it does
Yes.
make sense to me.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I did go a little bit over 5 minutes, but I was able to do that because of Caleb's resounding endorsement.
Okay.
And so when we look at something like this with all that background, he calls this 1 in 3 chairs. And he did a series of things like this where he chose an object and would say 1 in 3 or 1 in 5. And when we look at this, we're looking at a photo of the display. So we see a wooden chair. We see a life-size photo of that wooden chair in black and white that is taken with the chair, the same lighting and setup as the chair. And then we see a dictionary definition of what a chair is. With that background that we just discussed, does this make a lot of sense now?
Yes.
Do you see what he's doing?
Yeah.
It's kind of wild. And he's not doing this to intimidate people or to frighten people or make people feel that they're unworthy. He's really inviting you to open a door into his head and think about this kind of stuff with him. And then this also makes me think of Deadpool. I don't think anybody other than Ryan Reynolds could have done the Deadpool movies. Um, because Deadpool is like one of the first big comic book action figure characters that where the writers actively engaged with breaking the fourth wall and making sure that you knew that the character knew he was a character. And I think that Joseph Kosuth is doing that kind of thing with our brains in this. He's kind of letting you in on his own observations because he knows most people are going to encounter this as a photo itself. So when we start thinking about, well, where's the real chair? We automatically say, well, this one. When reality is, there's no real chair. This is just a photo of the exhibit. There's no real chair here. We're just seeing a photo of a real chair and then a photo of that real chair that is photographed in the photo that we're seeing. And then we start thinking about, well, where does the reality lie? Because this is completely real. It's completely real because we know it's evidence of an actual physical installation in a museum. But we also know it's real because we're looking at the photo in front of us. So it's a very real photo, regardless of what's in that photo. But just by having those questions be present, he's inviting us to kind of hold a conversation with an imaginary avatar of him about where the reality lies. Now, the big question is, do you think that this kind of a thing is art? And I have had people in my classes before who think that conceptual art is a massive waste of time. And I think you can make a pretty strong argument that there are a lot of examples of conceptual art where somebody had grant money that they needed to spend. That was about the only rationale. And but I also think that when an artist is actively trying to engage you in a conversation where you are almost forced to make an imaginary avatar of them and talk to them about the artwork, the artist is really doing a good job, I think. I mean, how many books or TV shows or movies or things like that have you encountered where you feel like you're actually talking on some level to the director or the actor as they're developing a character or whatever it is, because you're so engaged, you're not just engaged in the story in front of you, but you're also thinking of all the levels to it as well. How it was conceived, what it actually means, what are the different layers of its meaning. And I think stuff like that is really exciting to me. When an artist is doing that on purpose, because all of us do that anyway, but when an artist is actually doing that on purpose, it gets exciting to me.
That's good.
So your mission on this part is find an object, an ordinary object, and recontextualize it. Give it a new story. Do something to it. Turn it upside down, turn it around, do something different to it. And make it so that it is not the same. Whatever that means to you. And I am trying to find a couple images of this in the past where it's been very successful. Let's see. Okay. Published courses. Oh, I'm sighing because I thought I had this all set up, but it was not. Okay. So I want to show you some from a previous year and just go over some of these things so you can and critique them. The people aren't here, so I can be kind of brutal because you won't know who they are. But let's see. All right, that's one that I'm getting set up. And then I'm also going to do the same kind of thing with the cocoon as well. Okay. And I don't want to really tell you what they wrote about it so much, but we are going to see. This is a presentation. This is from last year. And this is the kind of thing that we're going for. This, not necessarily to this extent. This person did a really interesting job on how they photographed it. And I think it's really fascinating what they did. I don't know how they got this photo. Um, there might be some manipulation involved and stuff like that. But it looks to me, they said originally it was an hourglass.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did by setting, they took the hourglass out of its normal setting because this is the stand that it's on. And the stand that it's on is on the setting itself is one of those grid screens that you will see sometimes in front of an intake for air conditioning. And set it on top of just a flat light table and then put a whiteboard behind it. So it looks very futuristic in this photo, and I think that's great. And you can see this texture reflected in the balls at the bottom of the stand, and there's magnetics involved and stuff like that. Anyway, so that's the setup. But so the photo itself is recontextualizing the object, and it's fascinating. And here they talk a little bit about what it actually is. That's the first paragraph. And second is this is how they set it up. And they gave it a title, Timeless. And they talk about it. The timeless is, they describe that timeless is a reflection on what this thing actually, the object actually is. But by doing it, I don't know if you guys know who Mariko Mori is. Japanese artist that is absolutely astounding. But look up that name, Moriko, Mariko, Mori, Mori, and a lot of her stuff looks very much like this. And you can see how they recontextualized it. And in that second paragraph, they talk about the new meaning they're giving this with this kind of a photo. And then in the third paragraph, they talk about the justification as to why this is art now. So I think this is a really great example of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I want to let's see. I'm just pulling. What I'm doing is just going to a couple different examples of this. Okay, and then this person did something similar, where they're taking a cup, putting it on its side, and that's the photo that they're taking. And they're calling it beneficial. Okay, now I really like that first example was really good. The person took time generating a photo that made it look dramatic and exciting. This I have a problem with. Can you kind of see why I have a problem with it?
Kind of boring at first sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And there are a number of things that can be done to still stay true to this idea. Okay, we want to give this a new meaning. It's basically a plastic silo cup. First thing is, I would say whatever the photo is, make it the same width as the whole paper.
Okay.
Make it big and dramatic. But also, I would photograph it with some respect and reverence. Like I want all of you guys to photograph your own work. Take care to photograph it so it's well presented. And this would have benefited so much just by being put onto an ironed sheet infinity screen. Or this is small enough that you could also get some poster board and curve the poster board behind it. And take a photo that way. So we have just an infinity screen of white and the blue cup. If you want the reflection, then think of another way to do it. Find a friend who has a black reflective tabletop, and then uh, go to their house to photograph it there, and make an infinity screen just like that previous one behind the tabletop. That would be really cool. Or maybe do some interesting lighting and photograph it from the top so that all you see is the black field, reflective field behind it.
I wonder if change in environment would also help. Like, say, for example, um, if it's on its side, either like next to a bunch of other cups that are right side up, maybe in like a party setting where it's just on the floor and everyone else is holding other cups in their hands.
Well, and
Or is that too much?
that's an interesting idea. I don't really like that for this assignment because you
That's
are
fair.
introducing a new environment. But that's not to say it's not going to work. You might find a way to do that. I think if you did something like this, that this thing was dramatically lit and very prominent, and you used the focus field of your camera so that all the party goers were fuzzed out,
Yeah, you
that
could
I
do
think
that with,
would be really interesting.
you could probably do that with like some very interesting focus.
Maybe just concentrate. But do you see what I'm saying? We're not trying to make um, a photo room of
Yes.
Sandy Scotland. We're trying to put all the focus on the object. But if you did something like that, I would say keeping everything, the background out of focus, that
Mhm.
might be interesting. Or maybe another thing would be if you had an empty aquarium and you cleaned the glass really well, so you could set your camera right up to the glass and take a photo of this upside down so you see the air trapped in it. And then you manipulated it, just rotated it a little bit. So we see that the whole thing is surrounded by water, but we see this little horizontal, this vertical line there where we know that the air is trapped inside. You can do stuff like that. That could be really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, um, there's a famous image called Piss Christ, where a crucifix was put into a bottle of urine, and the person took a photo of it like that. And when people are not given context, not given the title, it's a completely different experience than when they know what the background and title is. And the guy was doing that and it is a metaphor for how a lot of people interact with religion, which I think is fascinating. But anyway, so yeah, I think Caleb, you're getting the idea. Let's see. Here's another one. Okay, so we look at this. This is where they put it on a white field and took a photo directly above it after lighting it dramatically. And they, oh, it's just a pencil. Well, what's good is that they blew it up so it's almost the size of the full page. And then they gave it a title that completely changes your relationship with the broken pencil. And then they really thought about the presentation. And I like this because this is very, very, very simple, incredibly simple, but it's photographed with a certain amount of respect and still that kind of deference and reverence to it. And I say that because it looks like they used white butcher paper as the background, but it's clean. There's no miscellaneous wrinkles. They lit it really intentionally. Everything is beautifully in focus. And then they did put a lot of thought into the paragraphs that they wrote about it. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'm thinking I may show you guys one more that is not up to snuff. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to show you another one that is really good. And then I'm going to talk about the now this one, what I would really have appreciated is if they blew this up even more. You know, if this was really, really big. Now, of course, you guys know what this is. But what I love about this is when it's photographed like this, it takes you a minute. You know, they did it on a completely black field that's slightly reflective. And it takes a minute to think about, well, is this the object or am I looking at a hole? You know, is this a shadow or is this part of the object? And I kind of love that. For a split second, you're wondering what it is. And then things start to snap into focus. And I think that's another really good example of a fun one. Let me see if I can find another one that's not quite up to snuff. Okay, here's a good example of that. Now this one is really hard for me to like. I think they did a pretty good job with the description, but photo wise,
It's bad.
I'm having a hard time with this. And I wonder if what if you did this on an infinity screen where we're kind of facing the side of it and it was propped up a little bit and we're the photo is really big and really close. That would be kind of interesting. So it starts looking like uh, just a really big sculpture or something. Or I don't know. If the object, I really want people to concentrate on making a beautiful photo as well, because then these become really successful. If it's a photo that looks like you spent 15 minutes thinking about it, it's going to see. I mean, you're not going to be as engaged. But if it's a photo that looks like you really put in the effort to make a beautiful object as a photo, I think that will be seen as well.
Mhm.
And I don't know what could be done to this. And I'm thinking one thing might be doing it on the same kind of background as that broken pencil, because that broken pencil is almost the exact same setup. But that broken pencil I want to look at because it is so clean and pristine. And maybe that might be a better way of presenting the turkey toy.
I think I've got an idea. I think also what does it for me with this one is, I mean, I've had a dog in the past who would absolutely tear up her toys. So we had to get very indestructible ones. Toys like that are the type that would not survive like 2 days. So I'm used to seeing these like kind of sprayed out or sprawled out, whatever you want to say, in that position. So because I'm used to that, it doesn't feel, I don't know, it feels like there could be, you could do something else. Maybe if it was like, if you had it like hanging on a hook in the photo, that's like an environment that you, or a position you wouldn't see it in, because how are you going to get a like a dog toy on a
You know,
hook without purposefully putting it there?
what I'm thinking, there's two things that come to my mind. One is getting a whole bunch of toys like this and making it look like a field of corpses.
True.
That would be one thing. And I'm thinking about like El Anatsui. I love his stuff because he takes things that everybody throws away and completely disregards it. But by using thousands of them, he builds stuff that feels monumental and amazing. And then the other direction, as you were talking, Caleb, the other direction I was thinking about is what if you positioned the sheet and then lit it so that it's obviously white, but positioned it over a setting so it looks like a lap and
Mm.
have this on the lap, something like as a reference to Michelangelo's Pieta, because then it becomes something completely different. And those kinds of things are what we're going for with this. We want it to be completely recontextualized. But I think like a dog a beaten up, ruined dog toy sitting on something that's draped that's reminiscent of a lap would really, that I can see a lot of people getting really upset about that too, but it would totally deconstruct and contextualize the object too. Anyway, so those are the kinds of things that I want you guys to be thinking about as you're doing um, the the objects. Now I talked about that quite a bit. I want to talk a little bit about the cocoon object as well. We talked about these stick Indians that Jason made. And Alex, I was telling him that Jason and I are both from Washington State, northwest of the U.S., and the indigenous peoples from the Yakima on up to the Tlingit have this take on, they call them, I can't remember what any of the actual words are, but it basically translates to stick people. And it's their take on vampires, where it's animated sticks and animated plants that will come and attack people and then suck their blood out or suck their life out. And we would have nightmares about this. And Jason, that's what inspired these sculptures that Jason did. And they're used as examples because they're regular sticks, but he cocooned them. And the cocooning needs to be something that, you know, changes the silhouette of the object at least 80%, but is intentionally designed to recontextualize the object. And I love this example of like the thrown away elephant toy that is
Mhm.
wrapped with garbage that has been found in, um, just hikes and picnic areas, stuff like that. Here's a kid's backpack where it's wrapped with toys and string and rainbow colors, but it's all toys and string that would typically be found with, around a kid's room kind of
Yeah.
thing. So you can't even see the backpack anymore because there's so much stuff going on. And then this is the wrapping of ironing board and clothes and an iron in somebody's apartment where they just talk about the things, and in the wrappings themselves you can see items that they use to get ready for the day. like newspaper to be read, the clothes to be worn, those kinds of things. And when they wrapped this, they used a hair dryer to heat up and melt areas of the plastic wrap, so it starts feeling very much like um, a
Cocoon.
like exactly like a cocoon. I'm sorry, I
You're
get really
fine.
excited. I know what I want to say, but the words don't quite come out right.
No, I get it.
No, it's totally half. It's fine.
And then what I am looking up is the objects that people have done. So here we go. So uh, this particular object is there isn't really an original object in there. I think the very inside might be something like a battery from a power tool or something. But this person, the entire thing is intended to be the cocoon itself, and it's all these objects that are from home renovation projects that were individually wrapped and then wrapped in other materials used in those projects, and then that was wrapped again in other materials. So you get these things like here, which is wrapped in plastic bags or string or yarn or charging cords or the cloth bags that some of the stuff came in. And so this is kind of a small one. It's only about this, it's uh, maybe between the size of a coconut and a basketball, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on. And I love this because you see there's at least 8 different objects that are each themselves cocooned. And then in addition to that, they're more thoroughly cocooned as well. And then this one, I kind of like where they're going with it. I like how they're starting with it, but this doesn't feel to me like the same level of energy as this one has, same level of effort. And I think first off, I don't like how this is photographed. It feels like this is photographed more intentionally. This, it looks like it was set in the corner of a room and then given a photo of, and I don't, so for that, I don't think it's photographed as well. And then the other thing is, if you're going to use tape, use a lot of tape. Now, in this one, each individual object is cocooned and wrapped itself. And in this one, there's objects wrapped together, but the tape, it seems like they kind of ran out of energy. And what I would think, and what I told the person I thought would make it better was to use like maybe blue tape, wrap it up a lot in the blue tape so that only a little bit of these power cords pop out. Then go over it with cream tape so you hide most of that blue tape. And again, just a little bit of this comes out. Then maybe go over it again with a different color of tape and just keep going back and forth like that until you get this odd shaped ball that maybe has just a tip of a charging cable poking out, and maybe a little loop of an electrical cord poking out, or maybe just the corner of this. And then I think it would work because this to me, it looks like it may have started off as a decent idea, but it doesn't really look like it has a lot of attention given to it.
Yeah. Like it was rushed.
Right. Same kind of thing with this. I think this could have been so much more cool if the person just kept wrapping it. Like Judith Scott would do these huge cocoons with all the stuff that she found, so that and people didn't even see the stuff until it was x-rayed years later. And I think something like this, you can still tell clearly the objects. But what if this person got a whole bunch of uh, shopping bags and wrapped it with strips of shopping bags, putting the Christmas themed stuff on the very outside. So we only see hints of red berries, like through here. You just see hints of color. Or maybe there's an ear from a reindeer that pokes out. And maybe inside of it, they also have wrapped a string of lights that maybe they can plug in. And then they have like 2 inches of clear plastic wrap over the string of lights. So the light is fuzzed out. Then I think it would be really cool.
Hmm.
And this one, This one kind of just bothers me. If you're going to use yarn, use several skeins of yarn so it's just a yarn glob. Um, this you can tell from the scale, it's only about 5 inches long, and it I don't understand why. Anyway, so it's kind of sad. And this is another one that if they spent another 20 minutes on it, half an hour, it could had a potential of being kind of cool. And then giving it more respect in photographing it would also make it cool. And by that I mean getting a bunch, maybe even wrapping this with strips of sheet that they got at DI to build up bulk, and then going over that with several layers of plastic wrap. So you just have little elements of the kitchen utensils poking through. I think that would, because this right here, this looks like almost anybody's shopping when you get home after going to like Target or something. That, yeah. This I think is a little bit more interesting. This person, you can see that they did wrap individual things, and I think that first one we looked at did a better job of putting them together. Do you guys kind of see why?
I like this one.
What's that?
I said I like this one.
I like it too, but I think that they could do more to wrap this together. And that's what I'm saying. The very first one that we looked at, I think they did a pretty good job. It feels much more cohesive. And then this one almost feels like it's a stack. And I think it might be really cool to take maybe some of this red and tie the whole thing together with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how like this object is wrapped, that object is wrapped, that object is wrapped. I love how all the things are wrapped, but they don't feel like they're as tied together as that first one did. So
Okay.
I actually kind of like that only some of the things in that last one are readable as the original
yeah,
thing, partially just because of the uh, almost net looking, and even then it's probably wrapped underneath, but like everything
yeah.
else here is.
I love how you can't tell really well what the things are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this, I like this one. I think that this one is going really good. I really like this one. I think that the thing that would make it better is another skein of this blue yarn and going over the whole thing and then photographing it in front of an infinity screen because this horizontal line is really, it doesn't give it much respect. And I think the reason I like this is it does take you a minute. I think this one right now at this stage, this one I think is a little bit better and is better evolved. This one I think would really benefit from covering the entire thing with maybe another beige and another blue ball of yarn. So we can't tell what that stuff is.
Yeah.
We just see this sticking out or this thing sticking out or that thing sticking out. Like that could really benefit. This one I think is really, this is a good fun idea and I kind of like where it's going. But again, I think, if we look at this is wrapped a lot better. So I hope you guys get what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This I think is a really good start. This would be fantastic if it was wrapped with a lot more of that clear wrap. So maybe we only see the red button and the ends of the sticks. I think that could be, and this deserves more respect when it's photographed. This is really an interesting one.
Oh.
I like that one too.
This is kind of a fun one too. What's that?
I said I like this one too.
Yeah. I think these are really fun. And I think this one, I the only thing that would make it better as well is more wrapping. And I do like how I think they shouldn't have had this photo at all. I think just this photo would be really cool. The one on the right.
Yeah.
Nah. This is kind of a fun one, but again, a whole skein of yarn and wrapping it, the whole thing solid, so that all you see is like half a face of each of these little guys. That would make it so much more cool.
It would almost look like they're getting wrapped up by a spider or something.
Yeah, yeah. Getting ready
Shit
to have
all
their
over.
guts liquefied and sucked out. Same kind of thing. I think this is going good, but more yarn, wrapping it with a lot more yarn would really be more successful. And I think that honestly, a big detractor for a lot of these things is that the photograph is not beautifully done. I think a good solid photo goes a long way. Yeah. All right. So you guys have a pretty good idea of what we're doing with both the conceptual things, the recontextualizing a ready-made, and then cocooning.
Yes.
All right, excellent. All right, well, we've gone over just a little bit. Do you guys have any questions? I'm first, thank you so much for both of you showing up. Alex, the fact that you're here has doubled the audience, so excellent. Way to go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now, and then second, do you guys have any questions about any of the stuff we've talked about?
No, I don't have any questions today.
Okay.
Not here.
All right. Excellent. Well, I am so pleased you guys coming today. Thank you so much. I want to say a couple things. One is uh, everything is due at the end of the semester. So if anybody's behind, just turn in the stuff that you have, get stuff done. If you need help, contact me. We'll do a Teams call, and I will help you however I possibly can. Every instance of that people have taken advantage of that, their grade has gone up at least a full letter grade.
Okay.
Second, when you see my comments and stuff like that, make the changes and resubmit. And most of the time, it just takes 10, 15, 20 minutes at the most to make the changes and resubmit. If it takes a little bit longer and it's the difference between getting a C and an A on a project, make the change. There's
Okay.
no reason everybody in this class can't get a perfect score. All right?
Yes.
All right, guys. You guys take care of yourselves, and I will have a great week and weekend, and I will look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Thank you so much. Bye
All right,
bye.
we'll see you.
Can I stay after class? I wanted to talk to you.